it's a real privilege for me to be here today to honor two people that Anita and I are amazingly fond of, John and Weisie. They understand the principle of giving back, of selfless service, and they've done so much for the cause of the suffering of our state's sexual abuse survivors. You know, I suppose it's human nature to discuss those things that are, you know, simply too horrible to imagine in terms of statistics and trends and numbers. And those numbers tell a compelling story. They can mask the reality that each victim of sexual assault has, and that they're behind that mask a real person, a daughter, a son, a brother, a sister. And the physical wounds of that sexual assault will heal over time, but it's that unseen damage that can linger for years or even lifetimes. And that truth is what makes this group so important. TAASA's work has resulted in more effective laws relating to sexual assault, to programs that have raised awareness of this blight on our society, and ultimately better lives for the survivors of such nightmares. And I'm very proud to have partnered with TAASA and other advocacy groups across the state to strengthen the laws relating to these very intensely personal crimes. Jeff, I'm proud that you and your colleagues in the Senate, and of course Joe over in the House, we passed Jessica's Law in 2007. It enables judges to sentence those worst child predators to life in prison without parole, forever removing them from society and eliminating them as a threat. And I recently called on the legislature to expand Jessica's Law to make life without parole an option for our state's worst sexual offenders, whether that victim might be a child or an adult. And I hope they'll make it a priority in the upcoming session, Mr. Speaker, but we've been taking other steps outside the legislative purview. For example, the Criminal Justice Division set aside some $500,000 for Crime Stoppers rewards, including the 10 Most Wanted Sex Offender Program. It increases awareness across the state for those at-large sexual offenders, rewards citizens who provide tips leading to their capture. And as you would expect, Texans responded very positively and quickly, and both with good information and using those dollars as an incentive, turning in 6 of the top 10 fugitives within the program's first 2.5 months. Now, sadly, it's not hard to fill that list back up. To turn up the heat on those fugitives even more, I've directed members of my team to work with the Department of Public Safety, the Attorney General's Office, local law enforcement, in creating apprehension teams to track down these sex offenders with outstanding warrants. And, you know, we've got great agencies that work together, but these focused teams will really improve our cooperation and communication and significantly increase the odds of apprehension. We're also making better use of technology to those who have been convicted of sexual assaults, expanding its use to include all of the most dangerous assailants currently on parole. I've directed the Texas Department of Criminal Justice to work with the Board of Pardons and Parole to expand the use of monitoring. John, we want to be able to immediately alert authorities when a paroled sex offender is somewhere they're not supposed to be, whether it's close to a school or whether it's close to an individual. And so under my directive, not just some, but all, Roy, all sex offenders currently under supervision and rated as high risk are going to be actively tracked to make sure they're living up to their terms of release. And I hope the legislature will agree with me that all high-risk sex offenders should be actively tracked for 3 years after they have served their sentences, ensuring that they comply with registration requirements. It's those types of aggressive actions that can cut down on the occurrence of sexual assault in Texas, and obviously our goal is to limit the number of victims. Anyone who doubts the motivation behind our efforts need only to meet a survivor like our next speaker. Then you know that every hour of work that you put in, all those long days that you put in, Senator, taking legislation through the process, every law that we pass, Senator, every dollar that we spend is worth it. When she was only 8 years old, she was dragged from her bedroom, she was horribly assaulted, and she was left for dead. Demonstrating the strength of the human spirit. She survived, she regained her voice, and she set out on a search for justice. She spent almost 2 decades, David, 2 decades pursuing her assailant with the help of investigators like Detective Tom Cromie, who's sitting over there by her. And at long last, all of that dedication, all of that hard work finally paid off when her assailant was arrested in another state and he was charged in her case. Her story of bringing that very bad person to justice inspires all of us, but we're even more amazed at your resilience, your refusal to be defined by a crime, your boldness in speaking the truth. She's not a statistic. She's not a number. She's a real-life example of a survivor's spirit. We're deeply honored to have her here today. Join me in welcoming Miss Jennifer Schuett.